Well, good morning and welcome to you one and all. And it's been lovely to have a couple of really nice comments about my videos, both on YouTube and on the Angela Porter's Colouring Book Fans Facebook group. And everybody's welcome to join that group. At the moment, through the coronavirus crisis, I'm creating a colouring template every week for the group. And once a month, we've got a colour palette challenge, and I'm trying to organise getting my head around all the different time zones so we can organise a chat over Zoom and get to meet me and things like that. I'm quite an introverted character, and this doesn't come easily to me, as does YouTube, or as doesn't YouTube, I should say. So a week's gone by since I did any work on this drawing, and I can't believe it took me an hour to do that little bit on the side. So much waffle. But to carry on, I'll waffle as I draw. It's a case of, I hope you're all doing well, that the week's been kind to you. I've had an interesting week, shall we say. I've had, over the weekend and the beginning of the week, I had quite a bit of a blip in my emotional well-being. And it impacts on how I view my art and whether I'm satisfied or not with it. And so I had a couple of days where I think you'd call them duvet days, really, sort of. Spent a lot of time in bed and so on. And without going into a lot of detail, this is something that I get from time to time. I wouldn't say it's a regular occurrence. You can't set your clock by it. But it's always the case where when it happens, I go, oh, why didn't I see the warning signs in advance? Because they're always there. But I think I'm so used to pushing them to one side for one reason or another. Now then, you may notice I'm drawing with a different pen this week. I bought some new ones. I found these lovely Faber-Castell pens. Do you know what? I don't even know what they're called. But they're fine liners and they're refillable. And I want to try them today to see if the lines will fit in with the pens I usually use, which are the Unipin pens. And I can't remember what size. I think I've been using a 0.2 or 0.3 or both. And just to make this very, very clear, I'm not sponsored or paid for anything by these companies. I buy all of this with my own money. I just like pens. And I like new pens and to try different pens out. So today I thought I'd try this one out. I've got one in pink and I've got one in a lovely turquoise blue. They're identical, but I like doubles of things and I couldn't decide which colour I liked. So anyway, to go back to that. So yeah, I've had a couple of days this week, or a few days, where I just have been well out of sorts. And trying to organise myself, let alone anybody else, has been a major thing. Glad to say I'm feeling much better now. My mood is definitely where I'd like it to be. It's where I'm very much aware of a touchstone of contentment inside. When I get these times, it's like an emotional storm, I suppose, like a weather front moving over, and it can cloud over that touchstone. But, you know, just to say, I've written a lot on my blog about my mental and emotional health journey to healing, and I'm not going to talk about it here. I may edit that little wittering out, to be honest. I'll see how I feel. But this pen actually works quite nicely. It is a little bit of a thicker line, I think, than the others, but it's not so thick that it stands out hugely. And by the time I finished adding stuff. So this week I want to move across and perhaps do a lot more in a short space of time than I have been. And it seems that, spirals seem to be the order of the day. So I decide what else I want to put in here. If I push down on this pen too hard, I do get a much thicker line. I seem to have a softer nib than the others. which is fine because I'll work with it. I like it. I like to change the different size of barrels from time to time and try different things. Yes, throw a few daisies in. That was my mind thinking out loud there. If you hear me slurping from time to time, it's because I've got my morning mocha with me. I haven't long got out of bed, I haven't breakfasted yet, but I just wanted to make sure I got this done, this video done today. And I thought, right, let's get up and do it. What's happened in the past week? Well, I had a visit from my niece and my older sister on Friday afternoon briefly, properly socially distanced. There's no way I was letting them in my house because they both wander through too many houses really and too many groups of people for me to be comfortable. But it was a lovely sunny day, so standing in the sunshine, outdoors, catching up on stuff. So I haven't seen my niece for over a year, well over a year, and I haven't seen my older sister in a year and a half, 2 years really. So there was a lot of concern about my younger sister and what's going on with her. Lots of memories and other things recounted and just filling me in on what's going on. So I think, as I said, I live by myself, and during the pandemic I have been very much by myself most of the time, which oddly isn't usually too much of a problem for me because that's how I've been most of my life. Even when I've been with people, I often feel like I'm on my own. I come from a very big family, and the house was always full with other family members and their friends, and I'd be the one lurking out the way in the bedroom I shared with my sister until things calmed down generally, or until there was something I really wanted to join in with. Particularly love board games and card games and things. One thing I do miss living on my own is I don't get the opportunity to do such things. But, you know, won't last forever. So that was nice. But I forgot to put sunblock on, so I got sunburnt. Yes, April, I got sunburnt on my face. And so it's all right now, but yeah. So that was nice this week. Not much else really. I mean, what does go on? Lots of art. Because I do tend to draw. A lot. More than you see on the videos. But then I tend to post a fair amount of stuff. Or at least, I say at least, no, it's not at least. I try to post some kind of new art daily on my social media. Whether it's complete or a work in progress, it doesn't seem to matter very much. To me, I just like to do something. And I have an awful lot of works in progress lurking on my computer, begging to be completed with digital colouring, patterns and textures. And so one day I'll get round to them. Just notice that I'm going to one of my most favourite kinds of motifs here. I love spirals, but I also love arches. Round arches, pointy Gothic arches, broken arches, arches with pillars, arches with geometric patterns inside, keeping it quite simple here at the moment. But these rounded arches do tend to echo one of my sources of great inspiration, I suppose, which is Romanesque architecture. Oops, connecting those at the top. Guess I'm not quite awake enough yet. And what they'll do is I'll leave these gaps underneath empty, and that will introduce a little bit of white space into my design, because I am a nightmare for filling every available space up just about with pattern or motifs or lines. And this will just begin to open the design up as well. It's, sorry if I'm turning this around too much, because I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do while I'm talking, and brain and mouth don't work together easily, it seems. There we go. Okay, let's add a different kind of pattern in this one. This again is one of my favourite patterns that will be seen in many, many, many of my works of art, in my colouring book pages. Little arches within arches. Well, or petals within petals within an arch. It depends how I complete them, because this is just basically the bones here. There's the last one. Now then, I know what I want to do with these, I think. This will make them look like arches rather than petals. It's a line, especially when I add some pattern to it, make these look very much like there's a tunnel almost going away from the arch. Add that little bit there because that adds consistency. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change to a finer point pen for this, because I do want to add shadow, but I don't want to add all black, so this is no one. It's very fine, as you can see. Excuse the sniffles. Tree pollen beginning to start. And so I get sniffles and waffles from it. Occasionally it sets asthma off, but not if I take care of it properly. The asthma, that is. Can't do much about the tree pollen. And I wouldn't want a world without trees, so for a few weeks a year I can cope. There we go. So that adds some shadow there. Looking at this, I'm guessing that this pen is close to an 05. It's a little bit thinner than an 05, I think. I'll have to do a comparison myself later on. But I actually like that. I like the flow that I've got here. This one on the bottom, I have this overwhelming desire to double arch. In Romanesque architecture, you often get these multiple arches, one over another, and each one is filled with a different pattern, motif, or repetition of things. So see how we're going to go here, I think. So do I want to, I know what I'll do, I'll use this fine pen again, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this up as if it's blocks. Those arches aren't made out of one block of stone, they're made out of lots of blocks, all of which sort of like slot together, and it's the physics of how they hold up and things. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's all to do with forces and tension and compression and But I think it's a compressive force that pushes them down and just holds them together. There's little bits of water in there. But what I'm going to do here is, in each one of these, I'm going to try to do a chevron shape. This is from memory, so my memory will be dim on Romanesque architecture at the moment. Not been able to get out and about churches for a long time, and abbeys. It's unusual for me not to visit all these beautiful old places. And this is where I go off on a tangent, because in Wales we have many beautiful abbeys and old churches, and not very far away there are even more across the border in England. And of course normally we can travel freely in years without a pandemic and rulings. And I absolutely love to spend a day visiting old favourite churches, newly discovered churches, with a camera, even if it's my phone as it was, sketchbook, pens, or a notebook and pens, to make note of all of these beautiful, beautiful designs and patterns. Okay, so I want one down here that's just a bit wider. And if I was drawing this, it would be in full glorious, I'd use shadow and light pen. Been a long time since I've been sketching actually. But I'm just taking the bare essentials here, because these would actually be double lined. In fact, I can do that with a finer one to give an idea, because they often have a double, much finer moulding there, just to separate them. Not moulding, but like a line. Do you know what? I don't know what they're called, but it's like a little chased out line that separates these. And these particular V's here will actually often be rounded, so they dome upwards. And this is where a lot of my inspiration patterns back in the early days of my discovery of art, my artistic ability, about, gosh, it's got to be the best part 20 years ago. And they became so inspirational for me in so many ways. And I've put these a bit too close, but it's fine, because those are enough to give that sense of dimension. And that's a very typical Romanesque kind of pattern. Bit of mocha. Romanesque started really around about the end of the Anglo-Saxon period into the early part of the world after 1066. And it's characterised by very round arches, big chunky round columns, all of which are richly, I say all of which, depends on the quality, the status of the church or abbey or building, can have decoration on all of them. And back in the day, they'd been brightly painted as well. And these places would have been marvels in the world, where there would have been inside lit with candles, and the colours would have been amazing, in contrast perhaps to how ordinary people lived. Not perhaps, but it would have done. And they would have been places of wonder, very much centres of the community as well, not just for religious reasons but for others as well. In the churchyards, church precincts, there'd be markets held, and celebrations and all sorts of things going on. Okie dokes, well, if that one's a doubler, this one's got to be a doubler as I witter on. So how can I do this one? Okay, let me just think here, because again I'm going to take that fine pen, and this is my way, is that if I use a fine pen, these will fade back, hopefully. I won't be so noticeable. That's a little bit smaller, but hell, don't matter. It's not going to be the same. Honest. So I'm going to mirror this underneath. As much as I can. Okay, and then what I want to do here is put some lozenges in. That must be the correct word for these things. These shapes, these diamond shapes, for some reason they're lozenges. I think it's because they're not, the lengths of the sides are longer or squished down, whatever. There's a lozenge there. And there's two ways of looking at that, I think. You can either see it as do you know what? I've lost the plot. It can either be a pattern of these triangles and the lozenges in the middle, or it can become a pattern that involves crisscross shapes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plonk, technical world that, because I do love a circle. And yet I'm going to use black here because that black will just help to bring this out. I'm not worried about the line through the middle because it's quite structural. I actually think that I've put the lines in the wrong place, because really you wouldn't have a line going through half a tiny ball moulding like that, sculpture, whatever it is. You'd have it in the middle of the axis there, but hey ho, artistic license. I couldn't remember exactly how I do it, but it works. And then these ones, what I'm going to do here, to put little triangles. Now I could have actually put a triangle and half a ball there, but I haven't. I love Romanesque because it's so honest, I think is the word. It's ornate, but there's a solidity to it that's sort of Gothic. As beautiful as Gothic is, just doesn't have. It's sculptures of figures and animals and plants and flowers are honest. They've got their own style. They're quite stylized in their ways, and I just love it. There's just something about it, the way they did eyes and faces and hair, clothes. It's just something that just ticks boxes for me. Okay, and this one needs one. So what I love about arches is you can just pop them in wherever and add pattern. This already has added some lightness and airiness here. I am going to leave that nice big space empty. I like that. And this one, I'm just going to do it, add squares in here. Not sure if I'm going to do it like floor tiles, black and white, but I'm likely to leave this exactly as it is and decide what to do. Should I scan this in, colour it and so on? That looks quite nice. Okay, let's have a look. Let's balance this out. I really want to put some things over here as well. And also it gives that feeling of these arches travelling. So what I'm going to do is like there we go, and I'm going to do it these narrow sort of like borders are definitely a feature of Romanesque as well. Sometimes they might have little patterns on them, but not usually. They're very plain because they separate each area of pattern in the arch, and I really like that. I was going to say, oops, I've messed up there, but I haven't, because it's part and parcel of it being hand drawn, and it will disappear once I add this. So carrying on with chevron-y patterns. So yep, so to go back to Romanesque architecture, I think there's so many beautiful churches and abbeys that I visited with them in. And of course, during the Victorian periods, which was the 1800s into the early 1900s, there was what they called a classical revival, where architecture and houses and decorations and furniture and so on were inspired by classical architecture and things, but they were done with modern materials. So a lot of chapels around here have a Romanesque appearance, sort of, but they haven't got that sturdiness, whereas the columns inside that hold the balcony above the main body of the church look Romanesque in shape. They're round, they've got the capitals at the top, but they're made out of iron, and they're narrow and thin, and they're lighter in area. So it's where the Victorians took inspiration from older architecture. I can't remember the reasons why there was this craze for it. I think at the time, there was a lot of Egyptian iconography motifs, and architecture came into vogue as well, as all the discoveries were being made in Egypt. Not particularly of Tutankhamun, because that was a bit later on, but there were all of these things happening. But I think they felt that the classical era was something to be looked on as inspiration, as an ideal time, perhaps. The Victorians were very good at looking at things in a very nostalgic, dreamy-eyed kind of way, I think. But in a lot of the chapels that were built, you can see that influence and how they've sort of got things. You can see the inspiration, but how they've missed how solid things were and how human they were as well. So how did I get onto that? Because I'm talking about Romanesque architecture and stuff. So it's, it tickles me a bit when I go to places and see things like that, because I like it. It's interesting, but it's still nowhere near as fancy and ornate and as colourful as the Romanesque churches would have been. And of course, from what I remember of my history of these things, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, the churches were really brightly coloured until the time of the Reformation, I think it was, where colour and iconography and all sorts of things were banned in churches. So the beautiful colours of the sculptures and the architecture, the wall paintings were all removed, whitewashed, covered up. But there are some examples still remaining, and they are wonderful. and it's really fantastic to see. It really, really is. Now then, I've got a choice here to make whether I think I am going to do another one. I'm going to go outside, you know, the pencil guidelines I've given for the size of my art, because I do like a limit to work to. And over here I can really see how much thicker the pen is than this, but you know, I really don't mind. I think it adds character perhaps. But I also think that this thicker pen suits these arches more because of their sculptural nature. Now then, what am I going to do here? I think I'm going to do this. I'm not sure if this is found in Romanesque churches, but it's certainly a pattern that is found on another inspiration of mine, which is Celtic items, artifacts, particularly of the La Tene culture. And these would be Iron Age. And this features in them in various ways. It looks a bit like mermaids, or fish, mermaid scales, or fish scales. There's another pattern I love where it's formed in a different way, and perhaps I'll do that in a certain part of this, who knows. But again, this is a motif that appears not as often as others do in my art, but I really do like it. It's almost like a ginkgo leaf, and I do like ginkgo leaves. I used to go for an appointment every week in Neath up until just over a year ago, and opposite where my appointment was, there's a little park, Victoria Park, and they have a ginkgo tree in there. And when I realised it, it was absolutely amazing, because I would look at it and I got to see it in different seasons and so on. But ginkgo leaves, very Art Nouveau. Again, another source of inspiration and something that I love. I tend to like things that are very stylised, that take the basic feelings of something and create something beautiful out of it, whether it's jewellery or artwork or patterns for fabric and so on. But that really does make me very happy when I see them. Okie dokes, I need to decide what to do with this one. I think I'm going to do, we're in zigzag mode, and there's a reason I'm in zigzag mode, just simply because I'm in zigzag mode. But also, when I use a lot of zigzag patterns, it brings a kind of coherence to them. Yep, there are breaks in the pattern, but zigzags and triangles and basic shapes are so versatile. So what am I going to do here? Make it look three-dimensional, perhaps, but I've got a feeling I need a bit of a pattern here. That's one. So we turn it round. That's it. That's how I want to do it. I'm going to do it like this. And it looks almost like I've got a folded piece of paper or ribbon there now. And that's a bit fun. I am trying my best not to move my paper around too much, because I know it makes me dizzy when I look at things where people are constantly turning it, so I'm stopping and thinking. Now that is beginning to get that. I've just noticed I've got a kind of an S shape going through here, which echoes the S in Serendipity, doesn't it? Now I'd like to, for balance, this needs to be heavier. And I think I'm going to do my best to get this one I am gonna turn this around this way because I want to get the next arch. This is not the easiest way for me to draw arches, so excuse me for turning this yet again. There we go. That gives some balance, and I do like that. Does give some balance there. It does. I'm quite happy with that now. I just have to decide what patterns I'm going to put in here. Well, I've got arches there. I've got something random on my paper there. I've got mocha that needs to be drunk. It's in a like an insulated mug, so it stays hot for a long time. Okie dokes. Said randomness. Okay, so what pattern do I put there? Right, well, I've got pointy arches here, so why not have some round ones for variety? And why not? These are all made up of very simple shapes that repeat. There's that. And what I'm going to do here as well is I'm going to pop this kind of shape there. If I'd made a much bigger arch here, perhaps if I'd just done this outer line first, I could have actually turned these into like miniature Romanesque arches with columns. I'd have to use lots of pencil for that though, to make sure I got things fairly consistent, but I did do that. Now then, do I do another arch? I think so. And yeah, you'd find things similar to this as well. I said similar, not identical. And then what I want to do here is I'm going to do the same as I did with the pointy arches underneath. And I'm just going to pop these lines in, and you now know what I'm going to do. To this. Go, pop that pen to one side, pick up the final one, and I'm going to add these lines. There we go, and that's that one done. It's one of my favourites. Well, they're all my favourites because I tend to use things that I love in my art. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that one, but this is calling out for another hair here. It just didn't feel right to have that one on its own now. So, okie dokes, what am I going to do here? Not Romanesque at all. But yes, La Tene inspired. There we go. Some spirals in there, which I love. And then what I'm going to do as well, like that, and just for around these sort of like triangular-ish shapes that follow the lines of the, and I am going to add black to them. A couple of years ago, I was looking at tribal Maori tattoos. Not for one for myself, but just interested in the patterns that are used. And it struck me how very much the same kinds of patterns are found the world over. And how some are very similar but are different, and how many can be made with just the same kinds of simple shapes. And this is something that's been done since humanity made wall paintings in caves, or carved things into bones, or created patterns in rocks. Prehistory. And these spirals and circles and swirls and other kinds of patterns make their appearance. So there's something about it that just satisfies the human psyche. Okie doke, and talking of satisfying the human psyche, it's time for squares again. But I was talking about Maori tattoos. You don't find this pattern only there, you see it in pottery, in woodworking, with the they use fine pieces of wood to inlay designs. And my mind has gone blank on what it's called. But there we are. So it's yet another triangle pattern. So this is how I spend my mornings. Do you realise this? I'm recording it today, and I'm talking as I do it, which I don't normally do because I've usually got radio on, or television programme, or something, a documentary going on in the background, or an audiobook. Say radio, it's usually Spotify actually. Again, I'm not paid, I'm not sponsored. But so it's saying you, so I'm talking really to myself and talking to you. If there's anything you'd like me to respond to, answer questions you'd like to see, then just drop me a comment and I'll do my best. Obviously artistically see, but we'll see. I'm trying to decide what to put in this one, and I want to try to use a pattern I haven't used yet. I think I'll do a variation of, where's the one, that there, this one down here, like the ribbons, but I'm going to use these sort of shell shapes, or the ginkgo leaf shape, just zigzags again, but with curves. So simple, but at the same time so pretty. This corner is insisting on popping up so you get to see my other hand. There we go. All right then, so what do I do with this? Well, we can do the same thing. But because this is a bigger space, I'm going to do something to add a bit of a twist. I do like little black areas and things. They give that, well, it's all about, what do you call it? Contrast? Interest? To have, you know, some density of pattern and colour, but that would be black there. Oh, no, it wouldn't, but it is now. It's fine. What I'm going to do is do all of these lines first, because I'll get confused otherwise. Which am I doing now? Oh no! And then go back and do these. we go. And that again is that little bit different, but it's based on the same kinds of shapes as I've used elsewhere. It's quite interesting, really. So I echo these ginkgo leaves here and this particular ribbon shape in that, and create something a bit different. Say it's endless. I've just noticed that this goes into this kind of pattern here. What I can do with that pattern. This is one of my favouriteest things to do from time to time with thin strips like this. Hard thing is keeping track of which one you've done. So I do those at the top, and then at the bottom it's the in-betweens, as it were. So I'm zigzagging top to bottom, or alternating rather than zigzagging. And it gives this really, really fun, intriguing kind of sense of three-dimensionality to that. How simple. It's fab. And I think that just, I like that. I could almost say this is done, but I can't because I have this overwhelming desire to put an arch there. So I think that might be my last bit of art on this anyway for today, because I then have to do things like, I don't think it'll need any editing. There we go. All right then. So what can I do with this one? That's nice. All right, let me take my finer pen. Sine wave. There you are, my scientist coming out. Just doing that. Perhaps doing some down there. It's got a wider line there. And I'm talking very quietly because I'm talking to myself, really. That I like. I do. And I think I'm going to add extra here. Again, that sense of balance. When on its own just doesn't feel right when the others are all multiple arches and patterns. This one here I am going to do a zigzag because it will fit in nicely and neatly there, and it also contrasts with that sinuous pattern above it, and I do like that bit of contrast as well. And I think to add that contrast I'm going to add, just put dots in the bottom because trying to draw small arches, small semicircles is going to be a mare in these small places. I can do it, but a dot will do just as well today. Change my mind as I started. That adds a bit of interest. And then my very last one, I think, today will be this one. Trying to think what pattern I'd like. I know what I'd like to do. I like bands like this. fact, I've got half a one there and not quite a... Should pop that there because that evens that up. Doesn't bother me one little bit. And what I might do is I'm going to take a finer pen again. And I'm just going to give these a little bit of an outside foot, if you like. They become like little weird letter I's, I suppose. This kind of rounding of corners or adding this little bit of extra weight of line here anchors them in. It's almost like they've been welded in place or something's been added to keep them there. It's like a ladder. But what do I do? What am I going to do with these? There's so many things I could do. And these will look a bit different depending on the size and shape. And of course there I didn't quite go up to the top, but that's no matter. Now I'm going to take that smaller, finer pen. Leaving a gap in the line lightens it a bit. You hear my phone pinging in the background. It's that time of day that it's turned on from night mode, so email and goodness knows what else, reminders and all kinds of things pinging. But that's okay. I can deal with that later. It's nothing urgent, I'm sure. Use my daily emails with news in and information and all the things that you subscribe to that sometimes I sadly need to delete because I just don't have the time. Okay, I like that, but I've decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back there. Again, I'm turning the paper simply because it just makes it that bit easier for me to draw. That's lush. And more. I'm going to do the same underneath as I did at the top. With this, it's a perfect, well, along the way, but this especially is that perfect way to show how I like to make use of different thicknesses of line, different pens, thicknesses of pens, I think. And the way that they add interest, and the thicker lines define spaces. The finer ones add that pattern and texture, or depth and dimension, sense of volume depending on how you draw them and how you make use of them. Like with these, I'm leaving breaks in the lines because it makes them look like they're shining. And it adds to that, or catching the light in places, and it adds to that sense of those curved lines adding that kind of dimension. Obviously shading and the use of colour, highlight and shadow will increase that sense of dimension. I absolutely love seed pods. I think I've said this before. Anything that has seeds in. Why? Who knows? Just do. Why do we like the things we like? I don't know. Sends some kind of resonance in our brain that we go, oh, that's really lovely. I always think if I leave one of these dots in the centre there, it looks like an eye. And sometimes I do make use of that. I will say that. Now then, last thing I'm going to do, because I can see I'm nearly coming up to an hour here. My stomach's beginning to feel that it needs breakfast. Is I am just going to add fine lines here. I could colour it in black, but I'm just adding fine lines because you can never practice drawing fine lines, close lines together enough. It takes fine muscle control, fine motor control. The more you practice, the better you get at it. And if I haven't drawn for a couple of days, I can feel that I'm a little bit out of practice. A couple of years ago, I went away for a few days, friend up to the Yorkshire Dales. Got to visit Fountains Abbey, which is fab, and some other places, but different story. And I didn't do much drawing for those days I was away. I didn't have a chance to. It was non-stop on the go. And I missed being able to draw. But when I came home and started to get back into art, I could tell. 5 days. 5 days. And my fine motor control had gone out the window. So there we are. That's everything for this week. You hear the click of me taking my glasses off. I'm getting increasingly happy with this. It has to be said. So I fidget with it to get it just so on the screen for you. There we go. We'll get there, maybe. There's always a point in a drawing, or perhaps a couple of points, where I think, oh, what am I doing? And I had that feeling last week with these things sticking out the sides, that I'd gone from one side to the other rather than working round or whatever. But it's worked out, I think, in my favour, because apart from adding those little bits around the bottom of that word panel, these arches were just what's needed. Not only that, they're actually just what I needed to draw. I find a lot of pleasure in drawing them. I can see I need to add one here. This one, I don't feel comfortable with a thick, heavy pattern there without a thinner border above. So if I add that in after I finish filming, I'm sure you won't mind. Over here, I can see things where I need to perhaps add stuff, but I'm going to leave it here for now, and I'll keep my fingers off it until next week, when I suspect I'll be finished. I'll have finished the drawing, and then I decide what I do next. I hope you've enjoyed watching. I hope you've enjoyed me wittering. If not, turn the volume off, put some music on and watch. Perhaps I should say that at the beginning, but I've said it now. If you've enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up. If you like what you see, think about subscribing to the channel. And if you've got anything positive to say, any advice, any questions, then leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer them and get back to you. So with no further ado, I'll say thank you very much for joining me for an hour, or nearly an hour this morning on a Friday. And I look forward to you joining me again next week to see perhaps the completion of this, perhaps not. So thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.